Dear listeners, this is the seventh episode of our podcast, Geofinance. Today we are going to talk about the artificial intelligence. Your hosts, Ivan and Dragan, will try to find some answers. So let's start with the possibility of using AI in geopolitical senses. Ivan, can you please provide some brief exposure to the use of artificial intelligence for the military purposes in this era of increased digitalization and implementation of innovative technologies?
For military purposes, general AI is going to be very useful for military purposes because we now live in an era of, as you said, a digital era, an era of information technology, cyber technology, and we will see various countries develop asymmetrical avenues of acting against their adversaries, which in many cases means that they will try to use the internet, try to use various digital means to spy on their enemies, to inflict damage on their enemies, to reduce the effectiveness of their enemies, their adversaries' systems. We've already seen some developments in this sense. We have already seen some of the major world powers develop weapons that can make independent decisions on who to kill, when to kill, how to kill. We've seen companies such as Boston Dynamics, for example, build some pretty scary robots. But also, major defense contractors such as Raytheon, such as Lockheed Martin, such as Boeing, they're all developing drones, and many of these drones are obviously still controlled by humans, but some of the new drones, they have the ability to make some decisions on their own. And this technology will also be developed certainly by the likes of China, Russia, possibly India, maybe Iran, North Korea, Israel. So these countries will, some European NATO members as well, I'm guessing. So Germany, the UK, France, Italy, maybe. And these can be used in a future war theater to inflict damage on the enemy without risking the lives of your soldiers, of your pilots.
Okay, so the possible implementation of general AI for military purposes may have devastating effects to competition in various senses, and autonomous weapons are already somewhere amongst us. Let us be a bit less dramatic in that sense, if possible, and let us continue our previous discussion on the unemployment issues. So, speaking of AI and speaking of new technologies, do you think that now, when many companies could see that digital solutions can help them enormously in in their operations, do you think that in times ahead, the use of AI may also increase the unemployment and may threaten to also white-collar industries as well to blue-collar industries? What's your stance on this?
AI is already killing jobs. AI is already taking over for people. There are already hundreds of thousands, millions of people who are laid off every year due to AI. And this is not just the fault of the AI itself. It's in many cases, it's actually the government's fault, because in many countries, it's actually very difficult to hire and fire people. And companies are trying to figure out any way to avoid hiring people, because if you in most European countries, for example, if you hire someone, you can't fire an employee just like that. You have to go through various steps to fire an employee. The firing process can take months. It can fail. If there is a union, you can actually fail to fire an employee. You want to fire an employee, but the union head, the union, stands by the employee, and he or she cannot even be fired. Or you have to prove any wrongdoing by the employee, which is very difficult. You have to prove it in court, which is difficult. or you can pay a severance package, which is in many cases prohibitive because it's very expensive. For example, in most European countries, you have to pay 1 month's salary for every year that an employee has been with the company. So if a company has to pay, for example, someone has a salary of per month of I don't know 3,000-4,000 euros and has been with the company for 10 years, the company now has to pay 30,000-40,000 euros to fire that guy, and that's not cheap. So companies have already been for many years trying to replace workers, to replace employees with computers, with technology, with various devices, with various techniques that can make it easier, cheaper for them to do business. And if you remember like 30, 40, 50 years ago, everyone had a secretary. There was a whole class of people who were just catering to the needs of executives, to the needs of business people. And that doesn't exist anymore. Now you have your smartphone, which has all of your appointments, which has everything. It reminds you of your meetings. It reminds you of what to do, when to do. Other people can set your meetings. You don't need a secretary. You don't need anyone to type for you. You don't need anyone to. You do everything yourself. Those jobs don't exist anymore. Factory jobs, many of those were automated as well, and that has produced a lot of unemployment in the West, in Europe and the United States especially, because not only have companies moved their production to China, that's a major part of it, and not just China, cheaper jurisdictions in general, but also there's been a lot of automation. And if a company can choose between hiring 10 people or paying for one robot, that's an easy choice because people get sick. People need to take vacations. You need to pay them. You need to pay taxes. You need to pay various benefits, social security, healthcare, all of that. For a robot, you don't need to pay anything. You buy the robot and it's yours and it works for you forever. You don't have to pay an extra cent. Everything about an employee costs money. If you're an employer, they can get maternity or paternity leave in Europe. You lose productivity there. An employee gets sick, you lose productivity there, and you have to pay. And in some cases, you get refunds from the government, but in some cases, you don't as an employer. So it's much better to automate. It's much easier for you to automate. A lot of jobs have been automated, and a lot more jobs will be automated when general AI comes. Jobs that are most at risk, I think, are accountants, people who do, the paperwork people. They are most at risk from this because it's very difficult to build an automatic plumber or an automatic electrician or a robot's pipe layer or something like that, because that involves a lot of manual work, a lot of dexterity.
Okay. A lot of, so to speak, manual skills by hands.
Yeah, and so a machine can do all of that, but it needs to be a very advanced machine. It needs to be very intelligent, and it also needs to be constructed in such a way to have many sensors, to be able to recognize textures, materials. It's not easy, but automating accounting is very easy.
Okay.
Another thing that will be lawyers will be automated. They're already being automated. Not the top lawyers, but the legal aides, the paralegals, they're all being automated. AI can go through databases, they can go through old court cases. It's becoming increasingly difficult to actually find a white collar job. And this will also affect teachers, doctors. You can, for example, right now, you can go on YouTube and you can go listen to lectures, watch lectures from the world's most well-known physicists, mathematicians, chemists. It's all there. It's all free. So the value of formal education will diminish. It will become less important, whether you went to college, which college you went to. It will become a lot more important for employers what you can do. And increasingly, AI will be able to do more than you. So AI doesn't need a college degree. Some people say that this will be just like any other technological revolution. We had the invention of the wheel that probably killed some jobs. We had the invention of the steam engine that definitely killed jobs. We had the invention of other breakthroughs. We had electricity that killed jobs. We had some early automation that killed jobs. But if you think about it, this is different because AI can be just as intelligent, just as creative, or much more so even than human beings. So we are being automated away. We're being replaced in this work paradigm by machines.
All right, but what about the regulation? Do you think that governments would leave it as it is, like to develop AI and then to put it to work just like that, just like completely without any regulation or without any like framework that would allow to human kind to be as much as important as possible? Or what do you propose? What do you see in 10 years time, 20 years time?
The thing with governments is that there is a conflict of interests there because politicians, they want to be elected. That's very important to them. But also the point of being elected is to get money. And the
All
only
right.
way to get money is to get it from large corporations. So they will try to find a balance in the sense that they will try to find a way to allow corporations to automate everything while at the same time making it look like they're fighting for the regular people. Also, they might increase taxes on these corporations a little bit so they can give some crumbs to the regular people, to the ordinary people, to the humans. But overall, I don't think that this can be stopped
Mhm.
because look at the automotive industry. That's an obvious one, and that one is coming very very fast. There are millions of truck drivers, not just truck drivers, drivers in general, delivery vehicles, all of that can be
Mhm.
automated, and very soon. I mean, it can probably already be automated right now, but it's government regulations that don't allow it to be. But
Right.
governments will be persuaded when they see statistics on road fatalities, for example, on how many accidents occur when a human is driving versus when a robot is driving, and humans are pretty terrible drivers. So robots will be much better at that than humans,
All
and
right.
people will just stop driving cars so much because over the next, you said 20 years, cars will be more like a service, like a Uber or a Lyft. It's like you would invite a car by an app on your phone or something. The car would come pick you up, and it would drive you to a destination, and you would pay the car. So you would pay the company. So you would have no human interaction. There would be no driver there, and the car would be a service. Very few people would own their actual cars.
Mhm.
And this increases efficiency because most cars, if you go through a major city, walk through a major city, most cars are parked. They're not active. They're not working. So this type of setup can reduce the number of cars in a city tenfold or more.
Mhm. Mhm.
It will solve the parking problem. It will solve the pollution problem. It will, because these cars will be electric because that's cheaper. So this will solve many problems, but it will also kill many industries because cars are a big business, and there are so many millions of people employed in the industry of car maintenance, for example. So many mechanics,
Mhm.
people who produce tires, reupholster cars, or some of that will remain, but it will remain in a different way. It will become more difficult to actually join this business because this business will be controlled by large corporations,
Mm.
for-profit corporations, and they will mostly do business with other such corporations. So there will be a lot of jobs lost. This has nothing to do with the current situation. The current situation only makes it all the more likely for jobs to be lost
Mhm.
because now a lot of people are being fired. A lot of businesses are failing, and so many companies will do everything they can to not hire anyone. So if you're a company and you have to fire 50 people to survive, you're gonna come back from this pandemic. But you're not gonna hire 50 people because by now, first of all, you know that this work can be done from a distance. People can work from home. That's an important part. So some of this will be outsourced to cheaper people working from home in India, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And many of the employees will just not be rehired because the company will find ways to automate their work or to find procedures that will allow their work to be distributed differently so that they don't need to be hired. And this will be across all industries. So 50 people got fired. I don't expect more than 20 to find new jobs at that company.
Okay, so
So yeah,
that
it
might
will lead to long-term unemployment.
yeah, that might sound like a problem. So we're gonna have this kind of, so to speak, critical junctures of outsourcing, digitalization, and as you said, more efficiency provided. All right. So let's imagine this AI development will not, it's not going to be evenly distributed, right? So some countries and some places would definitely have more AI, more developed versions, more implementation, while some countries will lag behind. So, do you think that it might cause some kind of like disturbance in international relations, in understanding of trade between the states, in productivity? So, imagine one country that will have enormous increase in productivity, and the other country that is not going to do that well in this digitalization process. So, how the world could cope with all that? Wouldn't that be like the good chance to increase the level of instability in some regions, in some parts? I mean, imagine one country that used to be like some kind of superpower, and suddenly it lags behind and it cannot catch up with other countries. So what can the consequence be in this respect?
Well, instability is pretty much guaranteed. Over the next 10 to 20, maybe more years, there's going to be a lot of instability, and it will be in all countries. It will not be just in countries that have that fare better or fare worse. It will be across the board. Another very important issue to note here is that countries don't really matter that much anymore because a lot of these international companies, they are international. They operate in many countries. So they will find the best possibilities for them to make a profit wherever that may be. They will find tax jurisdictions that don't tax them for their headquarters. They will find friendly jurisdictions for their operations. They will find jurisdictions that don't require them to record all of their online activity. So countries as such governments will lose influence in the coming revolution. And this will not, sure, we talked about the military grade AI. Some countries will have a lot of influence here, especially countries where the government controls industry, which is effectively China.
Mm-hmm.
China will have a lot of influence on its companies. The government of China will make the policies for its companies, and it will definitely try to weaponize AI. Other countries possibly less so because other countries don't really have that much influence on their companies.
Mm-hmm.
For example, how can the United States, how can any European country affect the operations of its companies? It can't because, for example, Google is not a US based company
Mm-hmm.
because Google is owned by the company Alphabet, which is based in an offshore jurisdiction, and it earns money through Ireland, where intellectual property is not taxed. It's called the Irish Dutch sandwich because it's a company in the Netherlands which has a subsidiary in Ireland which owns all of the intellectual property, and then the profits go back to the Netherlands where they're not taxed, and there is no financial reporting for some types of companies. So many loopholes will be used to not pay taxes, and companies, these large companies, will first of all not pay taxes, and secondly, they will have a lot more control over what happens in the world. And my fear is that we can reach a world where governments don't really have that much power, but companies do, and these companies are not really responsible to anyone because a government, you can change your government, people can vote against the government, people can vote in a different government, but companies, that's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we should like change the political system and vote Also in companies,
No,
although we don't have some kind of shares there or we don't have the right to vote. But do you think that the political system could change in that direction? It sounds pretty much to me like the AI battle can be really ideological in years to come.
it will mostly be about money. But yes, the AI battle is an economic battle, a class battle, an ideological battle, a religious battle. It will be all of those battles. We see now deep fakes, for example. That's a scary development because
Mhm.
now it's becoming very hard to distinguish between an actual video and a deep fake video. So anyone can make a deep fake of a president declaring war on another country, and it will be increasingly convincing. So
They already
if
are.
if you're a military commander, you receive a phone call from the president or a video call from the president, and the president is telling you to launch nuclear missiles. That's a scary scenario.
It definitely is. So, what could we do to prepare for the future?
I don't
Can we
think
do
there's
something?
anything. I don't think there's anything we can do.
Well,
We
that
have
sounds
a
scary.
we have we have a window of about, I don't know, maybe 7 to 10 years in which jobs will slowly dry up, and then it will become increasingly difficult after that to find work, white collar work especially, and it will be increasingly difficult to compete against these companies that own everything and that control the AI. Because and these companies will be Google, Facebook, probably Microsoft to some extent. There's probably going to be a Russian company or two, maybe a few Chinese companies like Tencent.
Hmm.
The point is that it will be an increasingly dystopian world.
Do you think that the nation state would like diminish in that sense and that we might have some kind of increasing number of city states that are going to have much more influence in years to come?
Well, the first response from the nation state will be to fight this because nobody wants to lose power. So nation states politicians will try to become more nationalistic to get their voters to become more nationalistic so that they can say, oh, this foreign company is doing this to us. But then they will lose power. So city states, it may be a thing of the future, just like it was a thing of the past.
Yes, definitely.
Uh, you see very successful countries such as Singapore, for example,
Sure.
and that might be the future. I don't know.
Who knows? It remains to be seen. Pretty scary vision, but also promising vision as well. So we might have interesting developments ahead. Good. Even then, I would like to thank you for your time and for this interesting insight. Dear listeners, I think that will be pretty much it for today. Enjoy your evening, and I truly hope to see you again, even. Thank you once again, and
Thank you.
see you around. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.